Be honest. When you study, what do you actually do? Do you reread your notes, highlight random sentences, watch the same lecture again, hoping it magically makes sense? If that sounds familiar, here's the truth. You're not studying, you're reviewing. And reviewing is exactly why you forget everything the moment the test starts. Most students think studying is about staring at notes longer. It's not. Real studying is a skill, and most people never learn it. That's why you can spend hours at your desk and still feel unprepared, stressed, or like everyone else is somehow smarter than you. In this video, I'm going to show you how to actually study in the method top students use to learn faster. Remember more, and avoid those last-minute panics. You'll learn simple techniques like active recall, spaced repetition, and how to structure a study session so your brain actually retains information. This video is for students who study for hours but don't see results, procrastinators who always end up cramming, anyone who wants to improve grades, learn faster, or finally feel in control of their studying. 4 common mistakes students make while studying. 1. The Netflix rerun method. Most students treat studying like watching the same episode over and over and hoping they'll suddenly understand the plot. Rereading notes, listening to lectures again, or skimming just to refresh feels productive because it's familiar. But your brain isn't doing any real work. It's just watching reruns. And just like reruns, nothing new sticks. 2. The highlighter artist trap. Ever caught yourself turning your notes into a neon rainbow? It feels like you're doing something important, but really, you're decorating, not learning. Highlighting tricks your brain into thinking you understand the material just because it looks organized. Rereading is similar. It gives you that warm, fake glow of familiarity, but familiarity isn't mastery. The last-minute hero fantasy, cramming, is like chugging a gallon of water. Right before a marathon, you feel full for a moment, but you're guaranteed to crash. Dumping information into your brain the night before might help you scrape by on a quiz, but it evaporates faster than morning fog. And the panic while cramming? That's your brain begging for mercy. 4. The pretty notes perfectionist. A common hidden mistake. Spending forever making notes look perfect, rewriting the same page 5 times, choosing the perfect font, or designing aesthetic summaries. It feels productive, but it's really procrastination wearing a cute outfit. Your brain stays in setup mode, never learning mode. Pretty notes don't equal understanding. All these habits have one thing in common. They feel productive, but barely teach your brain anything. They create the illusion of learning without the actual work that builds memory. So when the exam arrives, everything collapses because your brain was never trained to recall information, only to recognize it. That's why retention stays low, even if you spent hours at your desk. And the worst part, you end up stressed, frustrated, and exhausted because the time you invested doesn't match the results you get. In short, maximum effort, minimum payoff. Before we jump into the techniques, let's talk about why learning how to study properly even matters. You can pour hours into studying, but if you're using methods that your brain isn't designed to learn from, it's like trying to charge your phone with a broken cable. The effort is there, the results aren't. Most students aren't struggling because they're lazy. They're struggling because they've never been shown how the brain actually holds on to information. And when you finally understand what works, studying becomes faster, easier, and way less painful. The learning pyramid, the real reason. Some methods stick and others don't. Think of learning like a pyramid with different levels. The higher you go, the more your brain actually retains. And here's where things get interesting. Reading, the 10% zone. Reading alone gives you the lowest retention, it's about 10%. Imagine reading a recipe once and then expecting to bake the perfect cake. Not happening. Your brain recognizes the words but doesn't store the skill. Listening to lectures, the 20% zone. Lectures are slightly better, around 20%. It's like listening to someone explain how to swim. Useful, but you'll still drown if you jump straight into the pool. You understand the idea, but you can't do it yet. Watching demonstrations, the 30% zone. Watching someone solve a math problem or complete a chemistry experiment bumps retention to about 30%. It feels helpful, like watching a YouTube tutorial. But just because you watched a chef cook doesn't mean you can recreate the dish. 4. Practicing the concept, the 75% zone. Here's where things change. When you actually do the thing, solve problems yourself, quiz yourself, attempt past papers, retention skyrockets to about 75%. Practice is like driving a car. Reading the manual is nice, but you only learn by getting behind the wheel. 5. Teaching someone else, the 90% zone. The top of the pyramid, the holy grail. When you explain the concept to someone else, even if the someone is your wall, your pet, or your mirror, retention hits 90%. Teaching forces your brain to organize the idea clearly, fill in gaps, and express it in your own words. It's like really understanding a movie only when you try to summarize it to a friend. The step-by-step framework. That actually works. Now that you've seen how the learning pyramid works, this framework will finally make sense. Because every step here focuses on the top of the pyramid, practicing the concept and teaching it. In other words, we're moving away from passive learning and stepping directly into the methods that give you 75 to 90% retention. This is where the magic happens. Step 1. Learn actively. When you start studying, don't let your brain slip into spectator mode. Active learning means you engage with the material instead of just letting it wash over you. For example, when watching a lecture, pause every few minutes and summarize what was said in 1 or 2 simple sentences, as if you're texting a friend who missed class. When reading a paragraph, turn it into a question like, "What is this trying to explain?" Or, "How would this appear on an exam?" You can also try blurting, close your book, and write everything you remember from the last page. Or draw a quick diagram or flowchart to visualize the idea instead of rereading it. Even explaining the concept out loud to your pillow counts. These small interactions force your brain to process information, not just passively recognize it. Active learning is like nudging your brain awake, making it sit in the driver's seat instead of just staring out the window. Step 2. Practice the concept. This is where the magic happens, the moment your brain stops pretending it understands and actually proves it. Practice is the difference between knowing about something and being able to do it when it counts. Start with past papers. If you're studying biology, try answering an exam question without notes, even if you're unsure. Or open your textbook questions and attempt them before checking the solution, not after. For subjects like math or physics, dive into problem sets and do them step by step to catch your weak points. If you're studying history or psychology, do blurting, close the book, and write down everything you remember about a topic like French Revolution causes or memory models, then check what you missed. Even simple quizzes or flashcards count as practice. Testing yourself forces your brain to work, retrieve, recall, and organize information. It's the mental version of lifting weights, shaky at first, but stronger with every rep. Just like you can't get fit watching someone else work out, you can't get smart by watching someone solve a problem. You have to sweat through it yourself. Step 3. Teach the concept. This is the superpower level of learning, the part most students skip, but the one that skyrockets your retention. When you teach a concept, you're not just repeating information. You're reorganizing it, simplifying it, and connecting it in your own words. That's why it sticks. For example, imagine you're trying to understand photosynthesis. Instead of rereading the chapter, pretend you're explaining it to a 10-year-old sibling. Plants basically make their own food using sunlight, water, and a gas called carbon dioxide. It's like their personal cooking recipe. If you can break it down simply, you actually understand it. Or let's say you're learning a math formula. Try explaining why it works, not just how to plug in numbers. Record a 30-second voice note teaching the formula as if someone asked you for help before a test. If you stumble or have to check your notes, that's your brain waving a red flag saying, "Hold on, we don't fully get this yet." You can even teach inanimate objects, your mirror, your pillow, or your dog. The audience doesn't matter. What matters is the act of explaining. Teaching exposes gaps instantly and helps you fix them twice as fast because now you know exactly what confused you. When you teach, you're no longer a passive learner, you become the expert. That's why retention jumps to 90%. Step 4. Space it out. Most students study like they're trying to sprint a marathon, 5 hours on one topic, hoping brute force will make it stick. But the brain doesn't work like that. It learns better in short, repeated visits. That's what spaced repetition is, returning to a topic multiple times over several days instead of crushing it in one painful session. For example, if you're learning the periodic table, don't memorize it for 3 straight hours. Study it for 20-30 minutes today. Review it briefly tomorrow, and then again 2 days later. Each review becomes easier because your brain has had time to consolidate the information. Or imagine you're studying a chapter in history. Instead of reading it once and highlighting everything, break it into smaller sections and study them on different days, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You'll be shocked at how much more you remember without even trying harder. It's like watering a plant. Small, consistent sips keep it alive and growing, while dumping a whole bucket just floods the soil and washes everything away. When you space your learning, your brain gets time to breathe, build memory pathways, and stop information from leaking out like a cracked bucket. Review quickly, not heavily. The last step of your study session is like putting a lid on a jar. It locks in all the effort you just put in. But the key is to do it quickly, not spend another hour rereading everything. Spend just 3 to 5 minutes reflecting. What clicked, what confused you, and what you should tackle next. For example, if you studied biology today, quickly jot down the main concepts you remember. Like cellular respiration has 3 stages: glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport. Then mark the part that was confusing, maybe the electron transport chain, so tomorrow you can focus there. If you studied math, glance at the problems you solved. Did you make the same mistake twice? Note it down so you don't repeat it in the next session. Even a quick voice note or a mental recap works if writing feels slow. This short reflection reinforces memory, shows you exactly where you need more practice, and prevents wasted time revisiting things you already know. Think of it as a mini quality check for your brain. Small, simple, but super powerful. And that's the system, the exact way to study so your brain actually remembers what you learn instead of just letting hours of work slip away. Follow this step-by-step framework, and you'll see results faster, feel less stressed, and actually enjoy the process instead of dreading it. Start studying smarter today before it's too late.